Well, good morning, my friends. And I only say good morning because usually it's afternoon or evening by the time I make a video, but it's still morning here. And around 11:30 a.m. And I had a few thoughts on my mind I wanted to share, as usual. I go through phases where I want to share a bunch of things on YouTube, then phases where I don't. And right now is one of those moments where I'm feeling inspired. And it's kind of funny that I'm going to start this video with maybe a trigger warning, I guess you would call it, to anyone out there who is religious, who may seem or feel to themselves to be fragile or not wanting to hear anything that may conflict with what they believe. You can turn this video off right now because this is not for you. If you're not the kind of person who can look at your own beliefs and laugh at yourself, this is definitely not the video for you. And so, with that out of the way, I wanted to start off by saying that first off, when it comes to good and evil, I believe that, well, to even back up further, that no religion has a monopoly on the truth, and God cannot be trademarked or copyright. It's not the kind of thing where you can say, we hold the one truth. And I've made this clear in the past, but I don't talk about it often. And I'm surprised out of all the videos I've made, I used to have a lot more very critical of beliefs and religion. And I let that go because, and I heard someone say it yesterday, I think, in a video. They said, when I was younger, I used to berate religion, and then I grew up and realized that it's not something that's going to go away. It's something that people need and benefit from. Therefore, I have no problem with people who practice a religion and find that it benefits them. In fact, in a way, I envy many of them for having that, something they can actually believe in an afterlife, or a belief system that gives them hope that there's more than this. I'm not saying I don't have that. I'm just saying that, it's if a person can truly convince themselves, ignorance can be bliss. And if you haven't looked into the depths and the roots of your own belief system and you think it's the only one that's true, that can be a benefit. Now, when we're speaking of ignorance, I don't mean offensively like you're dumb. Ignorance just means you're unaware of certain truths. This could be because you ignore them, just like in the word ignorant. We ignore the facts, we don't want to hear them. But this also brings me to evil, which a lot of people use evil as a way to defend the fact that there must be good and evil, there must be a God, there must be a devil. Evil, to me, is ignorance in disguise. Evil, to me, is one of the most fascinating things, because when people say a person committed an evil act, I'm most curious with the root of why they did that. What is the reasoning? And there's two reasons. One could be revenge and hopelessness, a complete loss. I guess two could be psychosis or any type of mental disorder which causes a person to lose touch with what we call reality. Um, but there's the third one, actually, that's basically a lack of basic empathy or sympathy, or what you would call psychosis, or um, a person who is psychotic or a sociopath. They're different things. One's born with it, one is developed. But the point being that people who have lost touch with their emotions for others and their respect for others are very scary. In fact, they're some of the scariest people on earth. They don't even have to raise a finger to anyone to commit massive murder and mayhem, because a lot of these people are CEOs, commanders, leaders, presidents, Congress people. I mean, the list goes on. But let's set this aside. Let's just say evil is caused by ignorance, is what I'm getting at. Now, when I wanted to compare religion to something that we use as a utility, the best I could come up with was religion is like a car. And the more I thought about it, and this, I haven't really processed this yet, but I'd like to write about this and use this as a metaphor. Religion is like a car. Some of us need a small car that gets us from point A to point B. Some of us need a slightly larger automobile to haul our kids around. Some of us need a utility van in order to carry all of our tools or whatever we may do. Now, because of this, not every car is going to fit every person, just like religion. And sometimes these cars break down and sometimes they don't. But it doesn't mean a particular brand of car is necessarily bad. Now, imagine the Ford and Chevy guys that kind of popped into my head. Ford's the best, Chevy's the best, but really it doesn't matter. I've driven Fords and Chevys. They're both great cars as long as the automobile itself and the year and the model and the make and the way that it's taken care of is, good. And that's another important component. The car has to be taken care of. Oil has to be changed. It has to have tires rotated, all these things, or else it starts to fall apart on you and not work. Same thing with religion or a belief system. It has to be maintained. This is why people go to church. This is why people pray. But why people meditate as well. So one of the things that bothers me the most about religion is, through the past, the very heinous acts that were done in the name of religion. And this is often justified as being some sort of a judgment on other people who aren't believers. But it always brought me back to the old quote of, judge not lest ye be judged yourself, or he be judged himself. You are going to be judged if you judge, but so many people judge others that claim to be non-judgmental that it becomes almost absurd. And I think one of the most difficult things for me discussing, and I'm talking to Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, even Buddhists. I mean, I know that everyone seems to think they've found the right one. Buddhists I've talked to say, oh, these other religions kind of have it figured out, but they haven't figured out how to meditate, or they haven't figured out this or that. They're all fascinating, all the different practices, but the idea is to achieve the same end. And when you have seen the truth, whether it be what you call God or, let's put it this way. I've seen some amazing things in my time. I've seen what you would call the Godhead, I guess. And in that moment, I understood so much about myself and the world. But it's something that I could not bring back with me, and something I could never explain to other people. So I've never even attempted to talk to people about it. Because to me, that doesn't matter. I'm not here to prove what I believe to you. Because in my religion, in my book, it's not yet written. Therefore, there's no, clause in there that says I have to go out and share everything I believe with everybody I meet. But when we get into a discussion, I'll say, sure, yeah, I've seen some amazing things, and I definitely believe the universe is conscious. But the minute I don't agree that Jesus is the one Lord and Savior of the whole universe, I'm instantly ridiculed or tossed aside by Christians who refuse to have a discussion further. Even going as far as to tell me that I'm going to hell, that I'm basically satanic because I don't believe in Jesus. Jesus was one in a long line of prophets. If he existed, then he was just another human that had attributes thrown on him after the cause, just like many of those before him for 1,000 years previous in other religions that had the sun was down for 3 days and then he rose again, just like the sun does in the West. Everybody remembers Zeitgeist from their 2000s, and it didn't go away. Those ideas have been consistent through history. Much of it was nonsense and, speculation. But a lot of it was true. The religious part about it was these were documented historical facts that we can look up about other cultures and what they believed, very similar stories to Jesus. And the idea is never to demean or dispute or say your beliefs are wrong. It's rather to say, yeah, man, you guys got the right story. You just are really hung up on the name Jesus. You're really hung up on the guy rather than the idea. Even I believe Jesus said, walk in my footsteps, you can be as good as I can. Somebody said, he said something about you can be better than I. And it's funny these things are overlooked because Jesus, I can imagine, with the humility that the Christians give him, doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would stand there and say, I command you, follow me. But I have learned over the years why Christians want to believe that's true. Because many Christians, many Christians, and don't mean this offensively, once again. Many Christians are the kinds of people who like authoritarianism and need a leader and somebody to follow. These are often the same people who latch on to presidents that claim to be for the Christians or for the religious groups because they feel persecuted, and it's not because of anything other people are really doing. I don't believe that when the Christians say they've been persecuted over these last decades, I don't see it. I just see the declining numbers because people have woken up to the fact that maybe these people are a little too intense and maybe they don't have the full story. And these are all my opinions, my conjecture. But I have noticed that in many religions, they want to promote miracles when they're convenient. Anything that's amazing that happens. If a child is struck by a drone and he's almost bleeding to death and he loses his last breath and they bring him back to life, it's a miracle from God. But if he dies, it's God's will. And these things do not correlate with the way that I see the world. I see everything as true, God's will and a miracle. It's all one and the same. It's the same way I see the word supernatural. When people talk about something that happened that's supernatural, if it happened, it's natural. And I believe that the word supernatural comes with our disconnect from the world that we live in and our inability to believe that there are things that we don't understand yet, physics and laws and energies and fields of power and things we don't get yet. Just like in the 17th and 18th centuries, we didn't understand radiation until somebody stuck a radioactive rock in a drawer with a bunch of film next to it and it developed onto there. And we realized that it was being exposed in the dark. Boom, radiation is discovered. There's a lot going on out there that we don't understand. But often this is used as an excuse for, and I've heard this so many times I have to bring it up, Christians who will say things like, well, and this was actually a discussion that came up on a video I did the other day in my live cast, and somebody said, I think that you've misrepresented Christians because actually this and this and this, and they were saying that that there basically is a lot of reason to believe that God exists because the universe could not be by chance, and many biologists and scientists agree that it's crazy, the interconnectedness within nature, the way that humans and animals have these unspoken connections and what they call a symbiosis. And all of this amazes me too, to no end. In fact, I think about it all the time. But the difference is, if I say, yes, God created all of this, it won't be good enough for these people. They want me to say, their God created all of this. You see where I'm getting? They will use the stories of how amazing nature is to justify belief in Jesus. And I'll say, no, 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 absolutely not. There's absolutely not one shred of connection between Jesus and the world around us. Whether it's the Son of God, whether the Bible is true, is irrelevant. What they're doing is bringing up the bigger picture to justify a book when the book is the only thing that justifies the book. And it goes in circles. It goes in circles. And all I can do is bring up things in the past that have happened. You know, the way that the church went on the Crusades and wanted to force their beliefs on everyone. But even up until a couple of centuries ago, doctors would be called and priests into these houses where the children were possessed by these demons. And they would, out of the blue, just fall on the ground and just start shaking. Their eyes would roll back into their head. And they would call these priests in to do these exorcisms. Happened all the time. We now know this as epilepsy. And I want to use that to point out the fact that I'm not saying science is the answer and that religion should be abolished. Science was never intended to replace religion. Science was intended to be a tool to understand God. That's something that's completely misunderstood by people. And the idea that we thought that people who were having seizures were dying because they were possessed by the devil, and the idea that we burned, not as many as that were claimed historically, because history is always inaccurate, but the fact that women were imprisoned or killed or tortured to confessed that they were witches. All of these things show how ignorant we really are. And I think looking back in retrospect on today, we'll feel the same way. I really do. The thing is, I believe we do manifest our own reality. But since we do that, and since we have so much say on our own lives and our own interpretation, is your God a kind God? Just some thoughts I wanted to share. Thanks for coming along. I'll talk to you all next time.